I pay for everything. Lavish parties for my family every holiday, Christmas, Thanksgiving, you name it. But I don't know why I do it. My family is nothing but a bunch of racist. They don't love the person I married. Let me tell you why they hate the love of my life. Two things have always struck me as a curious about my family. While I love them and they're a fundamental part of me, there's times when I worry that they're so attached to the many values that were professed, I don't know, 200 years ago. Since I started in the world of entrepreneurship, I've had plenty of work opportunities that I've been able to take full advantage of. I could turn $1,000 to $10,000 in a month, and what can I say? I have the brains for it, but there are times when my family tries to tip their hand with loans or gifts that makes yours look like something's too easy. In fact, at one of my little nephew's parties, I overheard his parents saying that they should ask me for money, as it was the gift that we could benefit them the most. They're small-town rural people, and they have very little understanding of, many of the customs or limits that may be placed on people in my line of work. Or on average, too. Anyways, they're not so prudent with their affairs, and to top it off, I think I'm beginning to believe that they also have something against my wife. I got married relatively recently in a private ceremony to my girlfriend of 8 years, Tatiana. She's a womanizer in every sense of the rule. Tall, beautiful, nice figure, lips that drive me crazy, and strange as it sounds, very well manicured hands. The thing is that she's black. I know this is the 21st century, but my family doesn't seem to have been very present in that decision. My parents avoided having Tatiana around at any time, and it seemed like the only people who could tolerate her were the kids, since they don't have that gene to criticize others, especially when it comes to something so sensitive and out of everyone's control. And it was a big deal when I tried to introduce the love of my life to my family. Everyone made a surprised sigh that made Tatiana feel bad for a long time, thinking that she's done something wrong, but nothing could be further from the truth. My face was falling with shame, and all I wanted was for the earth to swallow me up and spit me out. I don't know, China, maybe, but over time they got used to this idea, and even though we did not get to visit family as much, at least they were able to keep their mouth shut when we showed up at their house. And my dad rarely had a slip-up. And knowing what he's like, I feel like he makes more of an effort to be able to see me happy. I've talked to her about the situation, red-faced with embarrassment of my family, of course, and she is surprisingly quite understanding about it. She's told me lamely that she's been subjected to this kind of treatment since she was a little girl. She was called nicknames at school and always stood out because of her color. She grew up in Chile, and she tells me that there's an abundant racism there and that it's not easy to be able to be in an environment in a place like that. So in my comparison, my family is a field of roses. Of course, that's not the goal, though. But I want to be able to offer her a life where she can be safe and surrounded by people who love her. My family is a bunch of white people, blondes, redheads, and her showing up in the middle of it all obviously causes a noticeable shock in the dynamic, but that doesn't mean something negative. I learned that some of my uncles even think that I have some fetish for Tatiana, forgetting that I've dated white and Latina girls before. I met her and ended up falling in love with the person she is. And I feel that the day we can learn that, then the day will be finally going forward as a society. Update number 1. I'm having a kind of a diatribe regarding two situations. You see, Christmas time is very important in my family. We usually start planning for it as early as October, even before Halloween. We talk about lights, decorations, trees, presents, and we even have a secret Santa exchange on Christmas. This year we plan to go big, since the whole family's coming, including some of the neighboring towns, and move the tables out to the backyard so we can cover the whole space. We know it'll snow lightly that day, so we can be outdoors without any problem. We've all talked about contributing a little to the celebration, but as expected, my shoulder bears the brunt of the burden of having the greatest financial abundance. I don't mind that part, as it's clear to me that they're looking for me to support the, best celebration and all. I'll pay for cabs and almost half of the food, and that it's not something I mind doing since it's from the family and for the family, and what matters to me and catches my attention is the reward or retribution I'm given as a result of it. I say this because of the situation that arises, and that is one of my cousins who also throws somewhat off-color comments regarding Tatiana, and he's even been the one who has proven to be bothersome to her. I talked it over with my aunt to see if he could just keep his mouth shut, and he took offense. He starts talking a lot of nonsense regarding freedom of speech and how he should not be self-conscious about anything. He's a journalist and he does everything he can to be able to get away with it. But it's not like people take a good look at the fact that there's racism in his position. He claims not to be, but I'm not sure. My only condition was that either he kept the comments at bay or I was not going to contribute anything for Christmas dinner. I know, it sounds rude, selfish, even childish, but I demand respect for my wife, and I don't care who it is. I'm not going to let them get away with it. According to my aunt, there won't be any more problems, but if there's even one comment about it between now and dinner, I swear I'm not afraid to cancel even a day before everything happens. My pulse doesn't tremble when it comes to things like that. Update number 2. Here I am bringing you bad news, this time in the form of embarrassment in the work area. And it's because of my younger cousin. She's 20 years old and started to work in a grocery store a while ago. Still having to pay the occasional hazing, but that's not the point. The point is that Tatiana went shopping there the other day and was branded by a cousin of mine. They're saying that she's a thief. Strange as it may seem, I'll tell the tale as best as I can after hearing both versions. Tatiana went early to buy some vegetables for a soup she was going to make. Usually my cousin's told to keep an eye on the shelves, as there's times when people steal produce and the security cameras don't catch it. Now, the thing is that Tatiana went with a rather light look, which included a hat that covered her face, but still left much of her skin exposed, which anyone could notice. It was then that, driven by stereotypes, my cousin sent for her colleague who was in the back office because, according to her, the woman who was walking in the corridors had taken something. The funny thing is that when my cousin partner showed up, who's a burly, menacing-looking guy, but still Tatiana's taller, and asked her what was going on, and it made her panic. Tatiana completely blocked, saying that she was just buying tomatoes. Then, as things went about to escalate, she remembered that my cousin worked there and started saying that she wanted to see her. This is where the tricky part is. Yeah, I prefer to believe Tatiana because of what she's seen on the security camera, which is that for a brief moment my cousin sees Tatiana directly and gives a slight nod to her colleague, saying that she doesn't know what she's talking about. It wasn't until the colleague made her move closer to the box that my cousin realized who Tatiana was. She even told her to take a good look at her, as she was her cousin's wife, me. After a moment, my cousin came to her senses, and it was then that she recognized Tatiana, telling her that she mistook her for somebody else. A cheaper excuse than tomatoes at the store. It was just a curtain call to say, well, I thought what I saw was what I saw. Tatiana was offended and left the place, calling me ASAP, but ended up regretting it instantly because I told her that I would go to the store to find out what happened, even though she insisted that I not extend the situation. I then went straight to the site to complain, going directly to my cousin. At first, I expected to be greeted with regrets and apologies, but the opposite happened. My cousin told me that she had seen Tatiana steal from the counter, and that they would check the security camera just to be sure. Well, we did. But based on what Tatiana tells me, it's more than clear that it was a mix-up and, subject to someone else's eye. Why, what bothers me the most is that he's being discriminate against all of that just because of her color. As I'm pretty sure that's what it was about. Things got tense when my cousin's partner said a few sentences that might have brought out the worst in me. It got to the point where we had to call the manager and explain what happened. But far from having a formal apology, he only asked us to not go to the place anymore to avoid inconveniences. It's unbelievable, as it's the first time that I've seen a boss advocate for his employees, and Ironically, it happens when it is an occasion where they're clearly in the wrong. I don't know how to deal with the matter, because when we were in the car after Tatiana told me that it didn't matter, I heard her crying as I looked out the window. Do you know how helpless you feel when you find your wife accused in the way of something completely natural? The thing is, they say there's no clear evidence that Tatiana was innocent, and yet people were saying she's guilty? Unusual in the universe, huh? The situation's caused me to put aside the Christmas party, and I hope the family will understand. I don't want to have to deal with the environment where we can't feel safe. Who knows, they may even blame Tatiana for stealing salad that night. I'm talking it over with her to see what she thinks, but if it were up to me, a couple of instant soups and that's it. Merry Christmas! Update number 3. To recap, this is what happened. I want to stay clear that these events are currently happening and I don't know what will end of this, but I'll give my options during this update. The day started as normal. Everybody was happy, cheerful, and high spirits, and we're talking about it being Christmas, so it's normal for the atmosphere to feel homely and familiar. We started the day with a family breakfast, all sitting at the table while we served things. Everything went wonderfully, and we just talked about the evening and how the preparations for everything would be. My cousin, the one at the grocery store, was pretty quiet. She never said a word to us, and she was going to work the same day too, but until 5 o'clock. So she preferred to leave to avoid awkward moments, and in fact this was a practice she started to do after that day. Unapologetically, still despite being wrong, at one point I think my parents tried to talk to her and her parents, but she ignored them, feeling that Tatiana had indeed stolen from the store. I considered not going to that place anymore. They may have the best prices in town, but they offended us, and if I were a little more extroverted, I would burn them on the internet. But Tatiana always insisted I don't, because it's not worth it. And if we get notoriety, we could get in trouble, or them too. It's not like my opinion is going to change the perception of the store, though. And speaking of Tatiana, she spent the whole morning playing with the kids. I think I mentioned it before, but she's very good with children, whom ask her all sorts of questions. Somewhat brusque of things, but they're children, and she prefers to be able to start explaining to them early some things like tolerance and respect. That's one of the aspects I like the most about her. And I always say, if only adults could understand this too, I feel like the world would be a better place. It all started to get a bit murky when some of my cousins were looking for their children to not be with Tatiana. And I say this with propriety because they would say the excuse that they were going to take a bath, but about 3 or 4 hours went by and I still saw the kids in their pajamas. It was just to keep them away from my Tatiana. I could see that the rumor about the store had spread with the family. I'd already had a very bad time pondering whether it was worth it to show up at the house that day. But as time went on, the more I came to believe it had been a mistake. But sooner rather than later, my suspicions were confirmed, and it was all thanks to my aunts. Tatiana tried to help in the kitchen, but she was rejected by everyone, and wherever she went, someone was willing to take her out there. Whether it was to clean up or do some chores, it was stupid because she kept asking if she could help with the decorations or finishing touches. But everyone just kept saying no, making her feel useless. They needed the help too. One of my grandmas was struggling with the roast beef, but she preferred to almost break her back before letting Tatiana help her. I told her I was about to go buy some things for dinner, and only then did she say that they had no problem with her accompanying me. I hated everything in that instant. I had to make a titanic effort not to get upset about it, and I know Tatiana had to try twice as hard because she didn't want the tears to take over. When I told my parents about this, they could not help me much. Because of the time they had been with Tatiana in the house, they already seemed to be talking liberties with her and keep telling me that it was better if she went with his family. Once again, I had to clarify. I'm tired of telling this that her family lives in another state, and it's as if they forgot the facts that I've told them about her life. But really, what made me rethink several things was what happened during lunch. We served the food and talked about how in the evening we were going to have almost 15 more members for dinner. We were excited, but a couple of cousins started with comments about Tatiana. At first they talked about anything, but soon redirected the topic. And not only talked about her, but about me as well, saying the typical stuff about fetishes and how we would be the new Bonnie and Clyde. Something I did not find funny, because they were saying it because of the store stealing thing with my other cousin, who, by the way, was still quiet, engrossed in watching her plate of food and giggling slightly as she took another bite. I politely told them to stop this kind of game, as they were no longer funny and it could ruin the meal. I had to say it that way because I'd asked them to stop politely, they would get worse, and everybody would get angry and offended. I'm writing this from the computer in the living room because I really had to get it off my chest. Tatiana decides to go out to the courtyard, and she was sitting in a corner by herself, with some of the kids eventually talking to her. It breaks my heart how we're treating, and her and I just decided to come here because I made an abrupt decision. We're leaving. We'll leave and leave the family badly off with other expenses, and I've already paid for many of the things that were, going to happen during the night, including special fireworks that were going to be set off in multiple colors at the request of our family. That and the cabs that were going to bring the other members as well, but after all this, I want to leave them with all the debt. And although it'll be quite difficult to do it without anyone knowing, at least that'll teach them not to mess with people anymore. I feel a little sorry and sad for those who are just arriving at the terminal or the airport, as they, like the children, are not to blame for this. But the family cannot depend 100% on me either, as it's just not fair. They give me a bad deal and I have to pay for everything. I'm just now realizing how foolish we were, and that if we're going to throw everything away, at least we can do it together as family. In a while, I'll tell Tatiana to come with me downtown to buy some things, but then when we're in the car, I'll tell her everything so we can travel and leave everyone else to their fate. I'm 90% sure that she's going to oppose it. And that's why I won't tell her anything until we're already outside. I know she's uncomfortable, and even if she pretends that everything's fine, I'm going to make sure that at least she can have a happy Christmas because that's what couples do. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go downstairs and tell her that there's news of something disguised. I don't know what could go wrong with that. I just have to be discreet and pretend it's something important. If they want to ruin my holidays, good luck with that. I'll have the last laugh. Update number 4. Final update. Christmas magic appeared in the form of revenge for yours truly. And while I may be judged as a bad boy, at least I have a clear conscience that it was for the greater good. You know, you have to teach misbehaving children's lessons, and that's what I did with my family at Christmas dinner. After my last note, I did what I promised. I pretended to go out for a moment with Tatiana in the car, and then we drove off to one of the city squares, which was full of people, lights, and beautiful decorations. She was talking to me throughout the evening, asking if it was the right decision to leave, but I told her not to think about the bad moments we spent the night with my family, but also about the other unpleasant moments that could have happened if we had not, left and still been present at the party. I don't want to take any chances with that, and so I told her to leave. Mind you, I did cheat a little too. I left a big part of the party unpaid. Well, it's very heartless of me, but I left a lot of things unpaid for the dinner. We were going to have some deliveries and cabs to transport the other family members, but everything was going to come out of my credit card. And all I did was cancel the transactions, leaving my account full, as well as my inbox of messages full on my phone. Almost all of my family was calling me in desperation, telling me to do something about it, and by doing this, I would ruin Christmas. And that's now I would be labeled as a Grinch, even to the little ones. Actually, with the kids, it doesn't hurt so much because they've already bought presents for themselves, and it makes me realize that even if it ends up being a long way from a perfect Christmas, at least they can have the satisfaction and peace of mind that they can have the toys they wanted. I know it sounds silly, but we bought one of my little nephews a new portable video game console, and I wanted to play it. In the end, Tatiana and I ended up buying some small things to eat at home, and celebrating our peace with ice cream with the love of my life. I saw in the stories of some family members, and It was all said that, quote, an evil elf tried to steal Christmas but did not succeed. Well, at least the evil elf knows how to respect people, which is more than they could manage to do. I ran across a really good comment about today's story, so I'll read that now. Hey, OP, I've been in somewhat of a similar situation with my family, and I totally empathize with what you're going through. Dealing with family dynamics, especially when they're steeped in outdated values or biases, is incredibly tough. I have some advice I could give you about my experience, and I think number one, you have to set boundaries. It's crucial to establish clear boundaries with your family. This means being upfront about what behavior and comments are unacceptable, especially regarding Tatiana. It's not just about protecting her, but also about maintaining a healthy environment for the both of you. And number two, communication is key. Have open, honest conversations with your family. Explain why their behavior or comments are hurtful or inappropriate. Even if it's obvious to you, it might not be obvious to them. Sometimes people don't realize the impact of their words or actions until it's clearly pointed out. So, do you guys agree with that? Some sort of, point of view from one of the commenters? And if you have any advice you could give to OP in the comment section down below, drop a comment. Let us know about experiences that you have gone through. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories like this every day, so if you do want to be a part of these daily animated readings, go ahead, subscribe to the channel, have a fantastic day. I'll see you guys tomorrow. And of course, remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.